Hi everyone, welcome to my tutorial on how to make your first ARCHVIZ room inside of Blender. Now I'm assuming that most people doing this have either never used Blender or they are just getting into it and want to learn. At least that's what I'm gearing the tutorial towards. So first things first, I'm just going to go through and just kind of set up a few things that I think will help you out. And the other thing we're going to do then is we're just going to pull all the models from Imeshh. Imeshh has probably one of the best libraries to bring into your ARCHVIZ scenes, in my opinion, for Blender right now. And they were actually kind enough to allow us to use some of the models that are typically paid models, just so I could kind of show an example of how great all of those are. So if you open up Blender for the first time, and one last thing, I just do want to mention this. I have my screencast keys on, so if I hit like G to move or something like that, then it'll pop up over here. So hopefully that will just kind of help people if you get stuck to see what buttons I was hitting. But if you have any questions at all, please just don't hesitate to ask them in the comments, and I'll see if I can help you resolve that as fast as possible. Anyway, so just a little crash course on how to move around in Blender. G is move. So if you want to grab something, it's G. But if you want to move it along the x-axis, you just hit X and it's locked like this. Y is locked like this. And if you want to move it up and down, you hit Z and it's locked like that. If I just hit escape, it'll go back to where it was. The other thing is R will rotate it. But as you can see, when you just hit R, it kind of goes all over the place because it's rotating on all the axes. So if you hit RX, it'll rotate like this. If you hit RY, then it will rotate like this, and then Z, it goes like this. So using X, Y, and Z really helps because it helps you just get, it just lets you have more control over where you're going to be transforming your object. And then the last one that we're going to go over right now is S for scale. So as you can see, if you just hit S, it'll uniform scale. But if you want to scale it on the X-axis, you do that, SY, and SZ. And then, yeah, so the way that I'm just kind of orbiting like this too is I'm holding in the middle mouse button. But something that you may notice if you are new to Blender is that when you're zooming in, it's only zooming in towards this point. And there is something you can click, just kind of click that off so that it'll zoom to your mouse position, which I think is what most people would prefer. So what you want to do is you want to go up to Edit. You want to go to Preferences. You're going to go to Navigation here, and then you're going to go to the Zoom to mouse position. That's the one that you want. And then while we're in here, we're also going to go to System, and you want to make sure that you're using, I guess, the rendering tool in your computer that would have the most, that would give you the best render time. Most people, I would think that would be a graphics card, and optics is the faster of the two if you have an NVIDIA graphics card. I think if you have an AMD one, you just have to use OpenCL. But if you have CUDA, then that works fine, but optics is a lot faster. So if you have one of the new RTX cards, I believe that optics works best on those, but I'm not sure what cards are compatible with that or not. Unless you have a really good CPU, those are typically quite a bit slower. So that is just something to keep in mind. So yeah, I have mine set up for optics. I'd also change these undo steps to something like, in the couple hundreds. Like you can really change it to whatever number you want. I think the default is like 32, which means you can only hit Control Z to undo something 32 times, which is not a ton of time. Or not a ton of times. And for the add-ons, you want to make sure that you have Node Wrangler on, because that will really help speed things up when it comes to the textures. And the other thing that you want is Archipack. So you want to make sure that this is flicked on. And then I believe that if you just hit the render preset thumbs, that is something that you have to run through the first time that you install this. But it is a really helpful add-on that just comes with Blender free of charge. So I really recommend that you have that set up. If you run into any problems doing this, there is a lot of stuff online, because I'll link some stuff below. But also, as I said, just ask the question and I can help you kind of troubleshoot that. But yeah, so I think that is just a quick little run through of some of the controls in Blender. It's not going to get too much crazier than that. I am going to try and set this up so that like if you're brand new to doing this, like you shouldn't get, hopefully you won't get stuck. I know that when I first started doing these, I got stuck quite a bit on fairly simple things. So yeah, don't feel free to ask any questions. The first thing that we're going to do though is we're going to make our room out of this cube. Now, by default, most people do have this. I think if you don't have a cube, then what you're going to do is you're going to hit Shift A and you're going to mesh and you put a cube in. I'll just delete my extra one, but you kind of get the point with that. So what we want to do is you're going to go click on this and you're going to go to Item. And I like to lock this to the Z axis. The reason being, when you're just making a room like this, is that we're going to set the height. If we see the dimensions here, we're going to set that to 274. And then I'm just going to hit G, Z and move this up a little bit just so it's above the grid here, but that's not really important. But now watch what happens if we just hit S and scale it out. So as you can see, our room's getting bigger, but that 2.74, if you look up in the dimensions, that's not changing. So I think if we do something like maybe bring it out here, and then I'm going to hit SX and bring it back in. So it's something like, actually, I guess something about like that be pretty good. And then SY just to bring that in a little bit. So I think that should be about a good enough size. And now we're just going to go about adding some thickness to these walls. This part, it's a little, like, I wouldn't say it's complicated, but it is a little bit harder, I guess, of a concept, but don't worry too much about it. We'll just kind of walk through it. And there's not too much to it that we have to do. So to make these actually have thickness to them, because as you can see by this, these are just infinitely thin walls. Like there's no thickness to them at all. We're going to go over to the wrench icon here and just make sure that you clicked on the cube. If you don't see that, it might just be because you didn't have it selected. So we're just going to go to the modifier properties. We're going to add a modifier, and that modifier is going to be Solidify in the generate tree. And then we're just going to go to thickness right here, and I'm going to type 5 inches. This is in meters, but if you type in 5 inches or something, it will just convert it for you. As you can see, yeah, so 0.127 meters. And you don't have to check this part, but I'll just kind of show you. If you see this now you can see that there's actually like an interior wall, and it's not just a thin plane. So this should be good. We're just going to go to this drop down here and we're going to apply it. So when you add a modifier to something, what happens is it's a non-destructive modification. So if I was just to click this X, it would go back to how it was before I put it on. But I want that to be there permanently because we are going to be using this as the room and I don't want to keep changing that. Or I just want that to be like kind of in there. So we're going to go to the drop down and we're just going to hit apply. As you can see, the modifier is no longer there. But if I go inside the wall, then that's right there. So yeah, that should give us just kind of like the rough outline of the room. And yeah, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start appending in some of the objects from the folder. If you haven't already downloaded the ARCHVIZ starter pack, there is a link below, and that will just take everything from the iMesh site and just kind of put it in one nice package. Now, what appending means though is appending is basically, it's almost like inserting another Blender file into this one. There's two ways you can do this. There's linking, which means that you can only move, rotate, and scale an object. You cannot change the textures or anything like that. Whereas with the append, it's just like you bring the object in and you can do whatever you want with it. We are going to do append with this one. So we're going to go to File, Append. Just find wherever you saved it. So I named this the ARCHVIZ starter pack. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in Window 5. So we're going to click here. We're going to click Window 5 Cycle. So there's actually another Blender file in here with just the windows in it. So we're going to click into this. And as you can see, we get a whole list of things. So these are all of like the objects, the materials, everything that's inside of this Blender file. if we go to collection, you'll see window set. And then you should see kind of like these orange outlines here. With all these selected, we're just going to hit G, Y, because we want to drag it out, just so it's over here. Now, what you're left with is these 3 windows. But I only want to use one of them. It just comes in a package of 3, so you have options, but I'm just going to click on this, delete. I'm going to click on this and delete. So I'm going to hit G, Y, and just move it a little bit closer. Now, what I want to do is I want to get these so that this is taking, like, I'm going to have 3 of them going across here so that we have some windows to the scene. And what I'm going to do is I am going to add a little bit more thickness to this, just because like our wall is 5 inches, but this is pretty thin. So I think the best thing to do is I'm just going to hit S, Y, and I'm just going to scale it out like this a little bit. And you know, it's not perfect, but I think that this will look a little bit better. And then I'm just going to hit GZ and drag it up a little bit. And then I'm going to hit GY and bring this back just so that it's kind of sitting right here. And if we just kind of rotate the camera and look through, then we can see it's not quite all the way through, but it is close. And so it won't look too bad. But if we drag this in a little bit more, hitting GY, then we can see that we might have to just drag it out a bit more. And yeah, there's definitely better ways of doing this, but I think that this is probably one of the easier ways. And then, yeah, so we just keep hitting SY until it kind of goes through. And you can hit, if you hold Z, there are 4 different modes. If you hold Z and go to wireframe mode, you can kind of see this just sort of inside, and that might help you line it up a little bit. You know, typically, this is a good little tool to use. I just didn't, like I said, I don't want to get people kind of too like flustered, I guess, like move around the viewport. So yeah, if you hold Z and we go back into solid mode, then we can just kind of look through there. But yeah, that's how you rotate between the modes. So GY or SY, sorry. As you can see, when you hold Z and go into solid mode, and we just rotate this again, now the window is poking out on each side, and you know, it's not perfect. Like, we could definitely make it a little bit better, but just for the purpose of this, I think it's going to function well. So yeah, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit GX, and I'm just going to move this over a little bit, just so that it's like right there. And now we're going to add in, we're going to actually make duplicates of this just so that the window goes all the way across to the other wall. And to do this, when the window is selected, so as you can see, we have the outline here, just hit Shift D, and then without hitting anything else, just hit X. And now we can see that red line coming across. So that means that the duplicate that we just made is now locked to the X axis. So we can just line it up. So what I'll do is I'll probably just put this like here, and then I'll hit Shift D X again, and I'm just going to move this over. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this here, and then I'm going to hit GX on this, and we're just going to bring them so they're basically on top of each other. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I think that that's good enough. And then, so yeah, what we've basically done is we've just taken the windows, we've made 3 of them. So we're going to be able to cut a hole in the wall where you'll just be able to see right through, and then we'll just kind of tweak the glass in a little bit. But yeah, this will do just fine. So something that this would depend on whether you have the left or the right click selected in Blender. I think when you first open it up, you have a choice of selecting with the left or selecting with the right. For me, I select with the left, which means that when I hold Shift and then click right, or right click on something, it will move the 3D cursor to that location. The 3D cursor, I guess the best way to describe it is it's almost a tool that will let you, you can either snap it to things and say like, okay, I want this object to move here. Or you could say I want all of the, the vertices or something like that to like point here. But more or less all you have to know about that for now is that if we hit shift right click and then put it here, then this is now sitting right on top of that face. And what we can do is we can now hit shift A. And if we bring in another cube, it's actually going to spawn right on top of that 3D cursor. So we'll hit cube. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to go into something called edit mode. Now, edit mode is going to let us actually go in and just like manipulate this cube so that it's going to fit into what we need it to do. The purpose of me spawning the cube here is I'm actually just going to shape it so it's the same size as the window, and then I'm going to cut it out. There's something called a Boolean, which basically means that it will just cut a hole in the wall and then it'll disappear. So what we're going to do is we are going to go hit tab, and then we're going to hit 3. The reason why you hit 3 is because now that we're in edit mode, 3 is the face select. So I want to be able to click on like this face, or this face, and then we can do certain things with it. If you hit 2, it will go into edge mode. And as you can see, when I click on this face, nothing happens. But if I click on the edge, it highlights. And if you click 1, it's vertice mode. So as you can see, when I hit 1, all this is happening. So with this though, we do need number 3. So we hit 3, and as you can see, we're in face select mode. You want to just maneuver it so you can get the top here, and then you hit GZ. You're going to bring it down just so that it lines up with this black line here. And then that should be good enough. And then we're just going to rotate slightly, and we're going to hit GX. And then we're just going to go back over to this other side here and hit GX. And I think, yeah, we need to go over more. And then we're just going to go to the bottom side, and we're going to hit GZ. All right. And now if we hit tab again, then we're back into solid mode. And yeah, so what we're going to do with this now is we are going to click so that we have our box selected here. And then we're going to go back over to the modifiers here. And now we're going to add the Boolean. So Boolean, it's in the generate tree, I believe. As you can see, there's an object here. So there's intersect, union, and difference. For this one, we do want difference. We are just going to go to this eyedropper here, and then we're just going to drag it over until you see cube.001. The one that just says cube is our actual room, so we can't apply the Boolean modifier to it because it can't be applied to itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to click with this eyedropper on object cube.001. And as you can see, when you do that, you're going to see this orange line appear around here. And that is actually the hole that just got cut through the wall. But what's kind of important to remember is that when we put the windows in, they are not technically a part of like the wall. So the window or the Boolean will cut the walls out so that we can see through the window, but the windows will be untouched. So what we can do is you can either go and apply it, or just to check, you can click on this square here. And if you hit H, it will hide it. But as far as Blender cares, the Boolean is still applied to that object and it's not deleted. So if we hit H, then as you can see, it should just kind of look like this. Yeah, this is, it's kind of hard to tell in this mode. It will be more clear very shortly, but this has actually cut a hole through that wall. So if we hit Alt and then H again, it will unhide that block. And if you just click on the room again so that you're not clicked on, or you haven't clicked on the cube in the middle here, but the actual walls, then you should see the Boolean pop back up. And we're just going to hit apply. And then I'm going to click on that cube and just hit delete. And yeah, so now we have cut out the windows. Now, what we can do is we can go into material preview. So if we hold Z again and we go down to material preview mode, then we're just going to see, yeah, we're going to see the black metal here, and also the glass. Now the reason why the glass looks like this, it's just because it's material preview mode. If you actually go into rendered mode, it will be see-through, but we're not going to get into that just yet. Yeah, this is yeah, so that's all good to go. So what we're going to start doing is we're just going to hop out of the room, and we are going to start appending in some of the furniture. We can kind of get the room set up and just get a feel for it. So we go to append again, and now this is already inside a window set. We don't want that, so we're going to go back to just back out until we're in the ARCHVIZ starter pack. And now I'm going to bring in picture frame. And yeah, this part, we're just going to be going through it, appending everything. If you don't see collection, I think the best thing to typically use is object. Sometimes it just is labeled in a different way. So we're just going to go to object for this one. And then as you can see, the pictures appeared here. Now, if you have a keypad and you hit the dot or the decimal, it will actually zoom in to this object. And then this way you can rotate around it, like it kind of makes it the focus. That's also something I probably should have mentioned, that if you're ever having trouble like moving around in a scene, it feels like everything stops, just click on an object, hit that's near where you want to go, and then hit that period key, and it'll zoom to it, and then it'll just kind of fix like where your the point that you're rotating around is. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to hold shift and the middle mouse button just to pan down here. I'm going to twist a little bit. Now I want this picture to go right here on this wall. So what I'm going to do is, for me, it's, as I said, it's shift right click to put the anchor there. But for some people, it may be shift left click. That is just something you kind of have to, I'm just not sure what one you would have picked, obviously. So you need to figure out which one it is. So I'm going to hold shift and then I'm going to right click. And as you can see, the 3D cursor is now on the wall. And I'm going to show you a very quick example of why the 3D cursor is important. If you click back onto the picture so that there's a light orange outline, if something has a dark orange outline, it just means that it's selected, but it's not the active object. For this, we need it to be the active object. So once we've done that and we have put the anchor on the wall, we're going to hold shift and then we're going to hit S. And then as you can see, if you hold those two buttons, this menu pops up. What we want for this one is we want to just move our mouse button up to the selection to cursor, which means that the selected object, the picture frame, is going to zip right onto the wall where the 3D cursor is. Now, keep in mind that this little dot right here, that's the origin point of the model. So if it like rotates, rotates, scales, anything like that, it's kind of around that point. So if I say selection to cursor, this is already set up correctly, and I just let it go, it'll pop right onto the wall, and it saves a bit of time. So yeah, we'll just keep appending stuff in. So we'll go File, Append. We'll do the TV for now. We are just going to kind of go and oh, oops, not that one. I want the other one. Append TV wall mount. That one should be good. So yeah, this we're just gonna go through and bring everything in, and then we can kind of sort it out later. So the TV's in, diamond wave pattern rug. We'll bring this one in. This is the object, and then the rug. So this is another one where we're just gonna shift right click the floor. Oh, we may have to actually just hold shift in the middle button just to pan down, just because we need to see where that where the rug is. So yeah, we can click that here. And now, since we have this selected, we've already put the 3D cursor on the ground, we're gonna hit Shift S again, and then selection to cursor. And if we hit the period button, like the decimal, it'll kind of focus in on this object. So if we zoom in and orbit, that kind of stuff, it'll all be there. Now, this one is looking pretty good. I am just gonna hit X just to bring this over a little bit, and then we're gonna hit RZ, oh, not 180, sorry, RZ90. And then I'm just gonna pan a little bit, so I'm holding the shift button and the middle mouse button, GY. And I think this might be floating a little bit, so let's just check that. Yeah, it is a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're just going to hit GZ because we want to grab it and move it on the Z axis. So you just want to kind of make it so that you can't see any of the white parts of the floor. And we will probably have to come back and adjust this a little bit. We'll just get the rest of the models in. Right, so the rug is down now. So we'll do File, Append. And we're going to go to the wicker chair, collection. So that's in. Append, Hamilton replica. So there's our couch. We're going to go to Append again. And yeah, we're just going to bring all the furniture in, and then we're just going to go about using the simple transformations of like move, rotate, maybe scale, just to get everything in position. And then we'll kind of focus on the next task. Framed granite tabletop. This one, you're going to have to select the object. Now, when you have all these like this, we're actually going to click the top one, and then you're going to hold shift and click the bottom one, and they'll all be selected. We're going to append it in, and then they'll all come in. And yeah, this one, I do recommend that without clicking anything, you hit GY, and we're going to move this over here. And then I'm just going to hit like RZ90, and then just kind of hit GY and GX just to kind of position that a little bit. Since there are so many objects, you could put it in like a collection, which is just how you kind of organize stuff, but I'm not going to get into that too much here. Just kind of maneuver it around as best you can. And then, yeah, we'll just go back to appending. Palm, plant, collection. So again, without clicking off this, we just hit GX and then GY. And actually, we're going to click on one of these and just delete it. We only need one. So GZ to bring it up a little bit. And then we're just going to hit GZ. And yeah, these are just simple transformations. So just, play around with that. Get kind of used to doing that. And what we're going to do now is append in the credenza. And this is the last thing. So collection. And let's make sure this is the right thing here. May have to append in the other part of the file. No. Okay, so that looks good. Okay, so everything should be in here. And we can start rearranging it. So with this particular one, we should have it selected already. So I'm just going to hit RZ, and I'm going to type 270. And that will make it so it rotates on the Z axis. So basically just spin it around in 270 degrees perfectly. And it should fit flat against this wall. So we'll just hit GX. And we're going to move it over to the wall. And we're just going to kind of make it so that it sits like right there. That looks good. And hit GY and move it like right here. Now I think, okay, so if you click on the top part of this couch, it's actually separate from the bottom one. So what we can do to select both of them is we'll click the top one, and then we'll hit shift and then left click on it. For me, might be right click for you. And we're going to hit RZ. As you can see, they both move. And then we're just going to hit GX again, and we're just going to move it over. And if I pan over here using shift in the middle mouse button, let's go like this. And then as you can see, it's kind of in the floor, so we want to lift that up more. And yeah, and that looks pretty good. I will actually just move this rug a little bit, so we're going to hit GY or GX, sorry. And with this one, it's the same thing. So we want to hit Z, just bring this up so it's sitting on top of the rug, maybe something like that. And then now with this one, I want to turn it so it's not at a perfect angle. Just because in things like ARCHVIZ, you don't always want things to be perfect. Sometimes just having something imperfect actually makes the image look more believable. So with this one, we don't want it to be twisted at a perfect angle. We just want to hit RZ And then we're just going to kind of spin it however we like it. So it's kind of like this. As you can see, if you kind of, depending on where you bring it, it might mess it up. I find this works better if you hold it like out here and spin around it because, yeah, if you go right up close here, it'll spin faster. So if you want to get more detailed or more control, I guess, like hold it out here. So we'll put it like right there. And then we'll hit GX. Now, I want to have 2 of these chairs in this scene. So what I'm going to do is with this selected, I'm going to hit Shift D. Oh, oops, I hit, yeah, so Shift D, and then I'm going to hit GY to move it along this axis. I'm going to hit RZ again, and then we're just going to rotate it like that. Now, for this one, for this table here, there is quite a few things that we just need to kind of change up. So if you look on the right here, so the iMesh bowl all the way down to the top 2, these are all the objects. It's the table and the bowls. So if you click on the top one and then hit Shift left click on that, these ones will all get selected. And actually, we're going to Control left click on Diamond Rug because we don't want this one selected. We only want these ones. And we're going to hit GZ. We're going to bring this up just so it's sitting right there. And then we're going to hit GY. So far, this is looking pretty good, except this TV is floating. So if we hit, I'm just going to delete the, I'm just going to delete this here. We don't really need the mount. So what I'm going to do is grab this one, RZ270, and then I'm just going to drag this over to the wall. And I'm just going to go until I see it go through, and then, yeah, I'm going to pull it back a little bit. Oops. So I hit H there, so if I just hit Alt-H again, it will unhide itself. And yeah, so the way that I'm kind of navigating around here is I'm using, obviously, the middle mouse button to orbit. If you don't have the middle mouse button, you can use this gizmo up here. But if you do want to start using Blender, I really recommend that you get a mouse button that can orbit. It'll save you a lot of time. But yeah, I'm using a middle mouse button here, orbiting. And then when I want to move, but not like rotate the camera, then I'll hold Shift and then hit the middle mouse button and it'll pan. Just those are 2 very important controls. So I just really want to make sure that people understand that. What we're going to do now is we're going to grab the TV, GY, and then GZ. And that should be pretty good. You just kind of want to make sure, like kind of rotating through, just make sure that the TV is not poking through the wall. So we'll just hit GX again. Yeah, as you can see, there has been, a lot of just simple transformations in this. Like I said, like moving, rotating, scaling. Part of the reason why I wanted to use these models, besides the fact that I do think that these are some of the best models that people have like to use for ARCHVIZ in Blender right now. But it also just kind of cuts down on the amount of work that new people or new artists with Blender will have to actually do anything too complicated. Like I am trying to make it so most of the controls are just grabbing, rotating, scaling. So right now this is looking pretty good. These objects do look a little bit big to me. So what I recommend we're going to do is we're going to click on one of them and then we're going to Shift click. We're going to Shift click all this stuff here. And then I'm just going to hit S and I'm just going to scale it down slightly. And then I'm going to hit GZ just so I can bring it up because you don't want the legs here to be through the floor. There is a couple more really small things that we're going to be doing. But for the most part, the models are in the scene now and we can kind of start to play around with it. Something that is worth mentioning too is that if you were in the material preview mode like this and you find that your computer is really struggling, you can hold Z and go back into solid mode because that typically is easier on the graphics card as it's not fixing the textures. But what you can also do that might help you out is if you go into the render properties here, so I believe it's like the camera looking icon here, and you go to simplify, in the viewport, there should be something here that says texture limit. If you bring that down to a number like 1,000 or even like 500, and then you click on the simplify box here, it will give you just better performance there. It just depends on what you have for a system. That might just kind of help you be a little more fluid in the software. And yeah, so that looks pretty good for now. Something I will say though is we're going to grab this picture and we're just going to hit G, Y, because we want to move it kind of down here. Okay, so yeah, if you have trouble or if you ran into any issues reaching this point, please let me know. And I can, as I said, troubleshoot it. The next thing I do want to show you is something that is, it may seem complicated, but there's some very easy steps just to kind of get to it. Quickly, I'm just going to grab, so there should be a wood texture that came along with this. At the time I'm recording it, the people from Imeshh didn't put it in the package, but they said it'd be okay to use it. So I will leave a link to that material. And if it's not, if it's on the ARCHVIZ folder. So if you don't see a link specifically for the hardwood texture, that means it is already inside of the package. So by the time I release this video, it might be fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly grab that texture. Sorry, I forgot to pull it out. So I'll just grab that and put it in my folder. Materials, wood. So the name of the wood is TW0078, like wood 78. So as I mentioned, that should be the one in your package. So I just made a copy of it here. Right. Yeah, and so wood 78. And we are going to need that for the next thing that we're going to do. So as I said, this is the part that in the tutorial that I think some people might find a little bit weird. So I am going to try and make it simple. There are some things I'm going through in this that are maybe a little bit more advanced, but I kind of wanted to at least show people, in my opinion, like the most efficient way of doing this, so that like even if you look at this and go like, you know, it may be a little bit hard, it's something that you should be able to pick up fairly quickly in the future, and then you'll kind of have an idea of that. So you could theoretically just apply the texture to the floor, but we're actually going to go in with the Archipack add-on, and we're going to actually get it to make the planks of wood, because in my opinion, it looks much more realistic if you actually have like just like modeled planks as opposed to just having the texture. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to create, or we're going to go to Archipack. Just to recap, just in case you don't see this, we're going to go to edit, preferences, and make sure that it's selected on. So if we you see this screen here and you just type in Archie, you should see the Archipack, and then just make sure you hit the render presets thumbs. But I recommend that you just save the file before you do that, because sometimes when it renders out the thumbnails, it can like crash or just kind of lock you out. That has happened a few times, so you just want to make sure that it is saved. But yeah, we're going to go to create, and then we're going to hit floor, and you should see some of these pop up. I'm going to go to the boards 200 by 200, and as you can see, when we do that, then we get these wood planks come in. Now we are going to have to move everything up slightly when we actually put the wood planks in. I could have put that in, you know, we could have done that first, but I did just kind of want to get some of the models down and get like the feel for the room before we start doing that. And there is actually a really simple way that we can get these wood planks to line up right with the corners. So there is something where in Blender where you can just snap things to certain objects. If you come up here at the very top and click it, we're going to snap this to the vertex. Because in each corner of the room, there is a vertex where the edges are meeting. So once we click on the vertex and then we go up here, we're going to click the magnet on. That means that it is activated. So you should be able to see the white corners of these wood planks here. But if you clicked off of it by accident, there's no problem. Just click back on the wood planks and go over to Archipack on the side here and hit manipulate, and then it should pop back up. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of aim our camera so we can see this corner. We're going to grab this, we're going to drag it over here. And as you can see, as I'm moving around, everything's kind of stuttering around because those are that's the wood planks kind of going over the different vertices, like it's snapping to it, but that's the one that we want. So I'm just gonna holding shift and the middle button to orbit, or to pan, and then the middle button to orbit. We're just going to kind of position ourselves so that we're looking over here at this other wall. We're going to hit manipulate. We're going to drag this over here. And then I'm going to go back to where I was, and I'm going to twist the camera so we can see these last two corners. And then I'm going to hit manipulate, drop that here, and then I hit manipulate and drag that right there. Okay, so now all of the planks are in. And if you want to kind of change things up a little bit, mess around with it, you can. I find that these settings are pretty good, except I normally change the variance to 100, and that just makes it so that the wood planks have a little bit more of like a stutter to them. And I think that that should be pretty good. So what we're going to do now, though, is we are just going to grab, we're going to grab all of our models and move them up a little bit. And yeah, so we'll do this. I will click on the couch, GZ, move it up. And yeah, as I mentioned, I probably could have got you to do this first, but I didn't think it was actually the worst thing to be able to grab the models and just get more comfortable doing this, because it is really like easy things that you can do. And before I forget, just hit this magnet so it's not on, because we don't want it snapping to everything. It's just kind of annoying. So we'll click on the chair, hit GZ, click on this chair, GZ, just so that we can't see it going into the floor. It doesn't have to be perfect. But yeah, we'll click on this and then shift click, shift click, shift click, just so that it all moves together. GZ moves right there. And then we are going to go and select all the things over here again. So starting at the iMesh bowl down to iMesh top 2. As you can see, everything here is kind of selected. So we want the rug and the tables here. So GZ. If you hit shift, hold shift as you're moving it up, it'll actually go a little bit slower. And we just want it so that we don't see any more of the white material. And then, yeah, so like right there should be good. We are just going to grab the plant in the back, GZ, move it up. And so I think that that is looking pretty good so far. So what we have now is the mostly modeled room, we'll say. There are some textures that we're going to have to go apply to it. We're also going to bring an HDRI in to the scene, because it's just free lighting and it's very simple. So what we are going to do right off the bat then is we are going to go grab that HDRI. Now, in my opinion, the best place to get HDRIs is HDRI Haven. They have free, royalty-free HDRIs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to type in HDRI Haven. And then we're going to find one that kind of fits the scene. So in this one, I'm just kind of thinking that we go for something that's like an afternoon, you know, maybe like nature. You can kind of just play around with this. I do have a background picture that we're going to be using that we took with a drone, just so that you can just kind of play around with it. And it makes it so that we'll be able to you know, have a kind of like a realistic setting for the background. And luckily it doesn't take up too much render time, but we still want the lighting for this. So we're going to go to nature, and maybe even this one looks pretty good. And as I said, it's not that important what you pick, except I do recommend that you use 1K for this, because what an HDRI is you can go and basically take a panorama. So let's say it's an 8K panorama, but you can actually record or replicate the light settings of when you actually took it. So when we get this HDRI, we are actually taking our scene and making the lighting match how the scene would look if it was sitting on this mountain. But the only thing we're interested in with this is the actual light settings, and we don't need the background picture to be very clear, because as I had mentioned, I actually have one for us to use. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click download on the 1K texture. So I am just going to pop open my folder here, and I'll just make this a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to drag this in here just so that we have it all together. What we're going to do is we'll be going into rendered mode in a minute. But before we do that, there are just a couple of things that we need to kind of check in on just to make sure that we're set up in cycles. So if you click on the render properties here with the camera, and make sure that the render engine is set to cycles and that the device is the GPU compute. If you have a GPU that is, it'll basically, like, unless you have an absolutely incredible CPU and just a terrible GPU, chances are your GPU is going to be able to render this stuff faster. So that is definitely something I'd keep in mind. But for now, this is what we kind of want to have. And then for the denoising, if you do have optics, then the optics denoiser is a very, very good thing to have. So with this tab here, denoising, just make sure that the renders optics. Yeah, and if you don't have it, the other ones will do, but optics, definitely the best. Viewport automatic. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the world, and we're now going to bring in the environment texture. So environment texture, open, and then we're going to go to our desktop, and we're going to find the ARCHVIZ starter pack and the HDRI. Now, this is why I kind of want to just get the render mode set up, is because when we flip it on, we should be able to see this HDRI. So let's see what happens. We'll go hold Z and go up to rendered mode. And this might just take you a second. Sometimes it, it does take time to kind of compile. Yeah, so right off the bat, the HDRI did work. And there is, like, the glass is working for this, but it is too dark. So we're going to have to just kind of adjust how this HDRI is, because like any, I guess like any actual scene in real life, there is a sun direction. With this one, it's just not pointing in the right direction. So what we can do is we can go up to shading. As you can see, we're going to see like this big node tree. Don't worry about this. We're not actually interested in this right now. That's just the iMesh material that was set up. You don't need to know any of that. We are just going to go over to world. Now, as you can see, when you're in shading, this is in a material preview mode again. So we're going to hold Z on this one and go up to rendered mode again, because we want to just kind of see this changing in real time. So yeah, this is kind of what I was talking about too. As you can see, this lighting is there, and this actually should not be there. So we will just delete this. You probably won't have that in your scene, but yeah. What we do now is we go inside the scene. So just kind of navigate your way back in here so that it's like right here. And then we will zoom in just so you can see this. We're going to hit Shift A. We're going to add in a mapping node. And then we're going to hit Shift A and we're going to add in a texture coordinate node. Now, for HDRIs, if you want to adjust them like this, we're going to take the generated and we're going to drop it into the vector. And then we're going to take the vector and we're going to plug it in here. So what this won't do anything right off the bat, but now this lets us actually rotate the HDRI. So if we come down here to rotation and we type in 90, no change there yet. So we type in 180. As you can see, that does start to change it a little bit. And I think that the sun is pointing in the right direction for this one. Let's just test 270 just in case. So yeah, so 270, that's about it. But we want it to be brighter than this. So we're going to go to the strength and we're going to type in 4. And as you can see, now it's really starting to kind of light the room up with a nice lighting there. So the HDRI is in, that shouldn't be a problem. The glass is working. We will add some interior lights in a moment. But for now, that's a pretty good start. So if you're just, what I recommend you do is before you hop out of the shading mode here, just hit Control Z and go back in material preview mode, just so that when we come back to it, it will be open, or it will be set up for that. And we'll go back in layout, and yeah, this may just take a second to render. But now we can go back into material preview mode in this one as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start just applying some of the textures. So for this particular one, the hardwood floor, we are going to put in that wood texture that I grabbed earlier. And as I said, this should be in the folder. If you do not see it in the folder, there will be another link that's clearly labeled where you can just get the textures to do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we have the hardwood floor selected. We're going to go to the material properties. Now you should see all this stuff here. Just by default, it puts that in. I always kind of forget to get rid of it, but we only want one of these. So we're just going to hit the minus button a bunch of times here. And yeah, so now this wood texture is all associated with this. So we'll just click use nodes. But if you want to just kind of see an example, if we hit the base color, if we move this around, as you can see, it's all attached there. But we're actually going to be adding in our own materials. So we're going to go back into shading mode. And now we do not want to be in the world mode anymore. Now we want to be back in the object. So what you're left with is this. So the principled BSDF, the easiest way to describe it is this is the most, the common node for linking everything up, because it lets you take image textures for like diffuse colors or just the color map, roughness map, that sort of stuff, and just plugs it into, I guess, like one big node, and then that can just add a lot of cool realism to it. And then that one node just plugs in the material output, and you have a PBR material, which means a physically based render. Am I right about that? Physically based? Yeah, I think it means physically based render. But PBR materials, that's where it just uses, the texture uses multiple maps to just get the correct information, understand how light bounces off of it, how it's going to look, whether it's metallic, that kind of stuff. So what I like to do is I'm just going to open up the folder. I'm going to find the wood texture. And for this one, we can just go to the 2K. If you actually download from the link, I think that you're just going to see these. So they will be 2K. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag the base color in here. I'm going to grab the normal and drag it in here. And I'm going to grab the roughness and drag it in here. And those should be the only three that we need. So we're going to go base color into the base color. We're going to move the roughness to here. And then we're going to take the normal map and we're going to plug it into here. Now, everything is kind of plugged up correctly, but there are a couple more steps that we're going to do to make it as realistic as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to sRGB, change that to non-color. And as you can see, the roughness comes in a little more clear. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to hit Shift A and we're going to add in a normal map node. Make sure that you don't select the normal node, but the normal map. Blender can't just take the normal map and plug it directly into the principled BSDF. It has to have some more information, and that's where this normal map comes in. Right, so now that one should be good, but we are going to set that to non-color. The only thing in your texture tree that should be sRGB is the actual color map. Everything else should be, I would say that basically everything else should be non-color. I think that as far as like beginners go, that's probably the best thing to do. Now, what we are going to do though is you should have Node Wrangler selected. So we're going to hit Control T while we have this base color selected. As you can see, it will automatically make these two things. So we're just going to drag our mouse up, maybe move this down, and we're going to click this in here. So what this does is this basically just lets it so that we can control like how the mapping works. So if we want it to be bigger, smaller, the texture that is, then we have control to do that here. One thing I like doing as well is hitting Shift A and going value, and then plugging that into the scale. And then this will make it bigger, but I think that that's a decent size. So we're going to do something called unwrapping. Now, this is something that is a little more advanced, and I think it's a little more confusing than it's worth on the first tutorial. I know I have done a couple of things that are probably not too beginner friendly, but I at least wanted to show people. So just follow the steps with this next part. Don't worry too much if you don't understand it. But basically what we're going to do is we're just going to apply, we're just going to make this wood texture look a little more realistic on all of the planks. So if we go back into layout mode and we have the wood floor selected and we hit tab, we are in edit mode, and we hit 3, we're in face select mode. So you're just going to click on one of the planks. You're going to go up to select similar, and then you just hit normal. Now, if you don't, like I said, if you don't understand what that means, don't worry about it. Like, it's not something that you should kind of be worrying about. This is just a really cool trick for Hardwood that I really like using. So once you have all this selected here, so when you hit normal, it'll select all of the faces going in the same direction here. So it's only selecting the top ones. Now we're just going to hit the button U, and then Smart UV project, hit OK, and that should be it. Now, the reason why this does look a little bit pixelated is because if we go back into shading quickly, we see it's at 0.5. If you type in 1, now it's smaller, but maybe just for the purpose of this, we're going to make it 1.5. And I think that that looks pretty good. The hardwood floors look quite nice. So yeah, you know, we're nearing the end of the tutorial now. There's only a couple small things I think we need to do before we can just kind of set up our camera to render it out. So what I recommend you do is hit shift and then left or right click depending on how you set up Blender on the roof. Now we're going to hit shift A and we're going to add in a light. So we're going to go to the area light. We're going to go to the shape over here. So as long as this is selected, you should see the little light bulb down here, and that'll let us just edit the properties of the light bulb. And we're going to change the power to, I think 5 should be good for this. And the shape is a disc. So this needs to be brought down a little bit because we don't want it to be like right on the roof. So we'll hit GZ, bring it down a little bit. We'll hit GY because we want to bring it out here. And then this is just kind of playing around with it until you find a place that it looks good. So I think like right there should be good. Now, if you remember earlier in the tutorial, I said that if you want to duplicate something, you hit Shift D. Now, there is one other thing that you can do that will make it so that if you change one of the lights, the other ones are now linked to it. And it's basically the same thing, except instead of hitting Shift D, you hit Alt D. So we hit Alt D, and then we hit X, and we drag this over, and as you can see, this is now there. So you don't have to do this part. This is just an example. If we go to the size and change it and we make it smaller, as you can see, both of the lights are shrinking. So I think with this one, we'll make the size like 0.7 maybe. No, I guess we'll just leave it at 1. That's fine. Just so that it's one less step. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, with this one still selected, we're going to hit Shift. We're going to click on that. And then we're going to hit Alt D again, but this time we're going to hit Y and we're going to drag these lights back a little bit. And you can just kind of keep going if they go like off the screen. That should be good about right there. So what we can do is I'll just save this file. Probably should have done it before this time. Where did I put this? ARCHVIZ starter pack, and I'll just call this room. And there shouldn't be anything crazy here. You can just, save it. Now we have the blend file saved. Now we're going to hold Z and we're going to go back into rendered mode. So yeah, that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how that's coming out. Yeah, what we need to do now is we do need to turn off the visibility of the light. So this is another thing that may seem a little bit complicated at first, but just follow the steps here and it'll make sense kind of as you go down the road. But basically what you have to do for each of these lights, I'm not sure why this part isn't linked. You do have to do these individually, but we're going to click on the light. You're going to go over to this object properties here, and you're going to go to visibility. Now, what this is going to address are these big white circles in the reflection of the glass here. We don't want that. So we are going to go to the ray visibility here, and we're going to hit transmission. And we're also going to do glossy, just because that'll get rid of both of them. As you can see, this one here that's close to the window, that's now gone. So we're going to do that a couple more times. Glossy and transmission. And then I'm just going to kind of reposition. I'll go back into material preview for this actually. So I'm just going to reposition the camera so I can see these ones here. And then glossy and transmission off. And glossy and transmission off. Okay, so I think the only thing that we really have left to do is to bring in I think it's to bring in the background image. So I will just grab this one as well. This will also be available for download. So make sure that you grab this one from the link below as well, because this one won't be in the ARCHVIZ starter pack when you first download it. So grab this, and I will open up the ARCHVIZ starter pack again, and I'll just throw this in mine. So we're going to put this here. What this is this is just a picture of Halifax that we just took with the drone. That's where I'm from, so yeah, we'll just use a portion of it. And yeah, there is something that's it may be a little bit weird, but yeah, it'll be worth it when we set it up. So the best thing to probably do, we'll just hit Shift A here actually, and then we're going to go up to the mesh. We're going to go to plane. Now we're going to hit our X, and we're going to hit GY. We're going to drag it out here. And we're just going to kind of adjust it so that it's in front of the window. We're going to hit S, and we're just going to scale it up. And yeah, I think that should be good, like right there. Now, something that is important about this is we want to make sure that it's not going to block the window. Because if you bring this into other softwares, it'll get rid of the back face, but just for the purpose of this, we want to have it so it's kind of like out here maybe. I think that should be good enough to at least see if that works. Now there is one more add-on that I forgot about that you should bring into this, because it will really help you out. If you go into add-on again and you go images, import images as plane. So make sure that that's clicked on, and that's just going to let us bring in the picture, and we'll just kind of tweak the materials just so it works in the way that we want it to. We're going to go to import images as planes, and now the A3 LR2, that is the drone image that we have. But we also want to do one thing here. We're going to go to material settings, and we're going to hit shadeless. Now we hit, we can actually just hit GY, bring this over here. And what we're going to do, actually, you know, it might be easier. We'll just get rid of this plane. Sometimes I'll just reapply the texture, but it's probably easy if we just use this one. So what we'll do is we'll hit tab to go into edit mode. We're going to hit Control R to make a loop cut. We just want the one. And then if you click, you can kind of drag it here. And this will just let us kind of adjust it a little bit. So now I've cut it up so you can see it's like two separate planes. We're going to click on this one, and we're just going to hit delete. If you hit tab again and go back out of edit mode, you should see this. We'll hit RZ, type 90, and now we're going to hit GY, and we're just going to drag it over here. And we're just going to kind of make sure that it fits, maybe make it a little bit bigger, pull it back. So I think that before we just adjust the material a little bit to get that more realistic, we are just going to add in a camera. Now you may have one already, but my camera is deleted by default just because I prefer to have it set up like that for when I'm working on a couple scenes. So click camera. Now, if you hit 0, it will take you into your camera angle. And if you hit N and go up to the view on the sidebar here, you want to lock the camera to view. I like doing this because it will actually make it so that you can just kind of navigate around like normal with the camera, and it'll just, the camera will always kind of stay at that point. If you find it's like moving around really weird like this is kind of where I recommend you click on something like this and you hit that dot on the number pad, and then from there you can just kind of scroll out until it matches what you want. So as you can see, we're kind of running into a problem here though, because as I'm backing up, I'm going through the wall. So we can just adjust this a little bit. So if we click on, if you click on this red frame here, it might just be hard to kind of click, but you can either select the camera or you click on this red frame, and now like you see this this outline here, that the camera is selected. So we're going to go to the camera icon over here, and we're going to make the focal length 25 instead of 50. And as you can see, it kind of pulls it back a little bit. With this, I think if we're like using shift in the middle mouse button and then just the middle mouse button by itself, we're just going to find an angle that we kind of like. So I do like this one, except I think that this picture needs to come down. So we're going to click on it, GZ, something like that. I think I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit, and you can just come over here and drag it. So I mean, this part is really up to you. Like, it's whatever you think looks best. Between the focal length and just kind of moving it around, it should look good. So I think I'm happy maybe like here. Like, I think that that's kind of good enough. So I'm going to leave my camera right there, and I'm going to hit 0 again. It pops you out of this mode. So as you can now see, like, the camera is now facing out here. So you can move around, and that's the camera. And if you hit 0 again, you'll be back into it. So let's just kind of see how this is going to look in rendered mode. So let's hop back in the camera, hold Z, go to rendered. And okay, so this is looking pretty good, except the background image is a little bit low. So I'm going to hit 0. I'm going to go back in material preview mode just because it moves a little faster. And I am going to grab this. I'm going to drag it up a bit. GY. Just like that. So now that should be good. And I will maybe drag this up a little bit just so it looks a little more realistic. Now, the part that I was talking about that we want to adjust the materials a little bit is if you click on this plane and go into shading mode, you will see this node tree. Now, this is another one where, like, don't worry too much about what I'm doing. Just kind of copy me with this one. So I am going to just zoom out so I can see this to make sure I did it correctly. I'm going to click here and hit Shift A. I'm going to hit emission, and I'm going to drag this right here. And then I'm going to hit Shift A, and I'm going to make a mix shader. So it's the same as this one, but we're going to be adding these two together. So we click this here. That goes in here. This goes in here. And as you can see, this is just going to turn white. But what we want the emission node, that's obviously going to make it like give off the light, but we want it to be in the same color as the background image. So what we'll do is we'll click on this. I guess you don't have to click on it, but just take the color and plug it in here. And then as you can see, it goes back to normal. So if we then increase this to 2, as you can see, the image is getting brighter. It's going to be kind of giving off light to give it more of like a daytime look. And then you can see we can keep going up. So I think 4 looks pretty good. That's going to give us that effect that we want. So I'm just going to go to File, Save. I'm going to go to Layout, and then I'm going to hit 0 again. And now let's go back into rendered mode. This will just take a second. So, this is looking pretty good. you know, we could obviously kind of mess around with a lot of things, making like the you know, I guess giving it like more of like a just give it more of like a professional look, I guess, that like someone that really knew what they were doing with the camera was working on it. But we can make it a little bit brighter in here. If we click on one of the lights and go to 10, I think that that's pretty good. Maybe the only thing I'd say too is like maybe select both these chairs, like click and then shift click. Maybe just hit S and scale them up a little bit because they do look kind of small. Oop, didn't mean to do that. Just hit S, scale them up a little bit right there. I think that looks good. Now, this is almost ready to render. The last thing that I would do, you could probably play around with the background a little bit too, but I think we're done playing around with that for now. Just go to the render properties here, like the camera, and make sure that sampling is set to 500. I think that that's a fairly good one to start with. That might be, you know, kind of noisy, but you know, just for the purpose of like getting the first render out there, I think 500 is pretty good. I don't know how long this is going to take you to render, just based on the fact that, you know, it does depend on your computer. And the other thing I just make sure is that for the resolution, let's just make this 1280 by 720, just because, you know, there's no point in rendering out a 1080p picture. It'll just take a little bit longer. And I think that that's, oh, there is one more thing, sorry. So in performance, if you're using GPU, set tiles X and Y to 512 pixels each. And if you're using CPU, set it to, I think, like 8 pixels each. It's just because CPUs are better at using small tile sizes, and then the GPU is good at using the bigger ones. And that's the best performance. So that is it, I think. If we hit render, I think it should be good to go. So before you actually hit the render button, I like to actually go into solid mode. I don't know why, but I find that it's the most stable. Like it doesn't ever crash when you do it like this, which I'm not completely sure how that works, but yeah. So if we just hit F12 and the camera's set up, then it should render out, and we can kind of see what happens. So as you can see, the screen pops up here. So we'll just let this render for a moment. Like I said, I could probably just trim this part down, but I figure we might as well just sit through and watch it. It's just going to take a second to load. Now, I do have a 2080 Ti, so it goes relatively fast. For this particular scene, it's saying that my VRAM is at 7.5 gigs. If you did the scene the exact same as me, and you have less than 8 gigs, you may run into like longer render times. But as you can see, it is going fairly quickly. So I hope that everyone gets a reasonable image. There is going to be a lot of noise in this. There is some stuff that we can do to change the glass, but I'm not going to go into that just in this tutorial because I did just make one about that the other week. So I will leave a link to that if you wanted to make it so the glass creates a little less noise. But, you know, overall, I think it looks pretty good. Obviously, like the more samples you want to do, the more clean the image will come out. For this kind of image, if I was like, you know, really trying to get a nice one, I would do the 1080p, and I'd probably do like 2,000 samples. That would probably give you a pretty good result for that. But yeah, you know, that's basically the whole tutorial. So, you know, hopefully it wasn't too complicated. A lot of this stuff, it's kind of weird because it seems right off the bat that it's like, you know, it seems very difficult when you first kind of start doing it, but then you learn very, very quickly. That's why there are some things that might seem like they're very complicated, I guess, for a first tutorial, but I at the very least kind of wanted to expose you to seeing some of this stuff, like even just importing the images as planes, you know, maybe adding some add-ons in, just at least messing around with the textures, and like UV unwrapping. So that's stuff that you will learn And it does sound a little bit more complicated than it actually is. So that's kind of why I just sort of breezed over it, so that you could just see that it is a thing, but I don't want to get kind of into the weeds of that, just so that there's not too much information coming at you. But hopefully you guys found this tutorial interesting. If you do think that the models are nice in this, I recommend that you check out imesh.com. I discovered them a couple of months ago, and I have to say, I think that it's absolutely incredible what they're doing. They have a subscription system for $99 a year, and that gives you access to 600 models and about 200 textures, I think. But they're constantly adding more models to their library, and what I really like about these models is that they're mostly these like modern industrial styles, where I find you just don't get that with a lot of modeling subscriptions that are on the internet. So iMesh is definitely my favorite place to get models right now, and that's why I actually reached out to them to do this tutorial. That I was like, I think that you guys have a an awesome library. Like, would there be anything that I can share with some of my followers or people that are interested in learning Blender, just so that I can say, like, here are some great models just to get started with, because I think that when you're first learning Blender, it is easiest to kind of use other models and just sort of get a feel for Blender, set up your own scene, like something like this, just so that you can get interested in it. If I just sat here and said, like, for your first tutorial, we're gonna model one of these chairs, well, I think that is obviously it's gonna be very frustrating, because you're gonna run into more issues with this. Like, as I kind of said, like, if there are any questions that you have at all about this tutorial, please ask me the questions in the comments below, and I will try and get around to troubleshooting that with you as fast as possible. And if I'm not available, then I'm sure that someone else will be able to help you out with it. So I hope that you guys found this tutorial interesting. I'll be making tutorials as well for how to do this room in Lumion, and also a tutorial on how to do this room, but doing all of the legwork in SketchUp instead of just doing that initial modeling in Blender. So when we do the SketchUp one, we'll do the walls, the windows, the floors, all that stuff is going to be inside of SketchUp, and then we're going to use the SketchUp importer to bring that into Blender. So hopefully you guys found this helpful. If you did find it helpful and you're not already subscribed to the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button and help me with the YouTube algorithm. If you are already subscribed, I hope that this was an interesting tutorial. I know it was a really long one, but I think that this will get you started in the right direction for Blender, or if you're just kind of developing your skills in it. I'm going to leave it there. I hope everyone has a great night. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. So while I was just editing the video, I realized that I actually forgot two small steps. So I thought I'd just kind of put these in here. One of them is going to be how to make molding. Now, there is one way that I think it might be the easiest just for this tutorial. We're just going to be taking cubes and just morphing them down to the right dimensions and then just slapping them on the walls. The other thing I want to show is just how to get a wall texture, or a wall texture from certain painting sites that you can just copy and paste that color into Blender to get very close or exact results. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to hit Shift right click, so it just hops right there, and I'll actually just turn on my screencast keys here. Here we go. Yeah, I just want to make sure that these are visible. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to hit Shift A. We're going to make a cube. Then we're going to go to Item, and for the dimensions, X is across. So I want to make this 0.5 inches. And that looks about right. And then I'm going to make the height 4 inches. And then I'm just going to maybe just click this couch, move this out a little bit, and then I'm going to drag this so that it's right against the wall. And you may need to just play around with this until you can kind of see it in the spot that you want it. So if we put it like, we'll just bring this out more. So maybe sit it here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to orbit back to kind of where we were, and we're going to go back into edit mode. So we're going to hit tab 3, and then we're going to click on this end here, and we're just going to hit GY, and we can extend it out just so that you won't see the edge of it in the camera. And then we're going to go to the other side. And what I'm actually going to do for this is I am going to go into wireframe mode. So I'm going to hold Z, wireframe. Then I'm going to hit tab, and I'm just going to click on this face just so that we can just get through the couch without, you know, just in the easiest way possible. And I'm going to hit GY again, and I'm just going to drag it till it's right about here. It doesn't have to be perfect because you won't see it there. But I'm going to hold Z and go back into solid mode, or material preview mode, sorry. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit Shift DX, and then we're going to drag this molding over. So it's just about here. There are ways that you can do like more elaborate molding, but this is just like probably the easiest and fastest way of doing it. And then we're going to hit Shift DX one more time, bring it to the middle. Then we're going to hit RZ and then just 90. And then we're going to hit GY again. And we're just going to move this right against this wall here. And this is kind of what I was talking about, where it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to make sure that it is visible through the wall. So GY again, and then that should sit like right there. And that should be good enough. It will be poking out the sides, but that doesn't actually matter. You won't be able to tell that that happens in the final render. So now that we've done that, the molding is finished there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up Sherwin-Williams, I believe it is. It's just a paint website. And so if I type in Sherwin-Williams and we go to color, and you know, you have all these like fine colors. So I wanted to do something that's maybe like a little bit gray. I think you can actually go search color family. So if we go neutral here, and maybe I'll just go like, okay, that one looks good. View details, details. And then what you want to find here is this hex value. So you can also use the RGB ones, but I find the hex one is the easiest one. Just copy and paste. So we're going to hit Control C when this is highlighted. We will minimize this, and then we're going to click on the cube. So these are our exterior walls here, as you can see. And then we're going to go down to the material properties. We're just going to hit new. You can double click on this name. We're going to call it wall plaster. And then we are going to go into the shading editor. So this is our wall plaster right here. You might be able to even do this in the main page. I personally just like to go in the shading editor. So yeah, what you can do though is just click on the base color, and you want to click on hex, and then it should be a number right here. We're just going to copy and paste our number in, hit enter, and then as you can see, the walls have changed color. You can do something that stands out a little bit more. I find that works pretty well. For the molding, I would not even bother putting a texture on it. We're just using white, so the default looks good enough. It's probably not the best practice, but as I said, it's fine for that. The next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to go type in wall plaster normal map seamless. And then you can really just take any texture that you find here. So just for the purpose of this one, maybe I'll grab this one. It really doesn't have to be that big of a texture. So maybe I'll save this image as, I'll just save it the name there. So we'll put that there. And then what we're going to do is we are going to find our texture. We're going to drag it in here. And then I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to bring in a normal map, and I'm going to plug this in. I will make this non-color. And as you can see, what happens here is that this kind of did work, but it's way too big. So we're going to, you can either hit Shift A, mapping, Shift A, texture coordinate, or if you installed or activated No Wrangler at the beginning of the tutorial, you can just hit Control T, and then this will automatically be made for you. And then I'm going to hit Shift A again. I'm going to add a value here, just so that we can control all of the parameters at once. And I'm going to set this to something like 10. That looks good, but I think we're even going to go further than that and go 15, just because we want these walls to have some texture. We don't want them to be too strong, and I think I'm even going to go higher than that. Yeah, you can just keep going until you find something that looks about right. This is you know, you might see kind of like repeating patterns with this, but I think just for the purpose of showing it, that is good enough. And if you want it to have, I guess, like more of an effect, you can go strength like 4. I don't really recommend you do this. I think 1 is good enough for this, maybe even like 0.75. So it's a little more subtle. But that is all you have to do to bring in the wall plaster. So this won't be reflected in my final render because, as I said, in my first run through, I didn't actually use this. But yeah, that should be it. So we can get back into the main part of the tutorial.